Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
What I was saying is I almost have a desk again.
Yeah,
no, I bought wood. I bought birch wood, just a birch board. And I'm going to sand it off, round the corners a little bit. I'm going to stain it, and I'm going to mount it on the wall. I got these great hinges, these collapsible hinges. So I have my desk, and then I can just flip these little hinges, and the whole thing will collapse down against the wall.
Damn, son.
Right? Pretty good, huh?
I'm
into carpentry, and I can screw things together.
You are serious.
I am. What I'm telling you is the act of sanding and staining a piece of wood stretches the boundaries of my carpentry skill. That's what I'm telling you. Even that stretches those boundaries. So
you've hit the limits.
I'm feeling pretty good about things if I can get this on the wall.
That is so funny.
Yeah, it's good stuff. How's your week? Good? Did you do anything good?
It's been good. It has been good. What have I been up to? I watched Spy again and had a great time with that.
You do like that film?
I do. I sure love that Melissa McCarthy.
You know what I didn't tell you, and I should have. I can't believe it. I should have called you the moment it happened.
Oh.
We did family movie night, and we saw Gem and the Holograms.
Oh, hey. One of my favorites from the year.
Yeah, I know it was. You've talked, I can't remember. What did you think about that movie? Let me tell you, it was, I think a lot of it, my son adored it. He just loved it. But my wife and my daughter, they compared it to there was a Disney film in the same ilk called Lemonade Mouth. Did you see that one? Lemonade Mouth?
That I never heard of before.
It's like a cross between, Breakfast Club and Gem and the Holograms.
Okay.
Kids get thrown into detention and decide, hey, we're a band. And then
That's
they become
hilarious.
Lemonade Mouth. And so but what's funny about it is the gal who plays the bass in Gem and the Holograms was the guitarist in Lemonade Mouth.
And so there's the comparisons.
Little crossover. So everybody, so we were a split household on Gem versus Lemonade.
Well, what did you think?
I gave it a solid, it was okay. Honestly, the reason I think I liked the film better. I loved the sort of the heart of the droid and the father story. Ugh,
yep.
That was a punch in the soft places.
Yes.
But honestly, for me, the music in Lemonade Mouth. If I'm gonna sit through a movie full of like bubblegum pop, the music in Lemonade Mouth was I found catchier and earwormier.
I see. I guess I'd have to see that to really get a good full understanding of the Lemonade Mouth music. But I really enjoyed the music in this one.
No, it was good, yeah.
And I really enjoyed the way that the director played with the editing of the more intense scenes and how they integrated a lot of YouTube clips.
You know what? That I thought was outstanding. I loved just the way they constructed the narrative. I'm right with you on that.
I thought in a story about an internet sensation and how that kind of is created in these days, I loved how that became kind of this integral part of the plot. And I thought that was a really fascinating way to play that. And sure, it's not a perfect film, but I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going for it. And I love that it's something that my daughter gravitated to, and I had a lot of fun watching it.
I did too.
I'm
with you. No, hey, we're in violent agreement.
There you go. I love that.
So anyway, I didn't do anything else, and I still haven't seen The Revenant, and that really hurts. But I'm still in that space of being torn. Anytime I think of, I've got some time to go to a movie. Should I see anything I haven't seen or Star Wars again?
It did drop in the box office this past week.
How far?
To number 3.
Down to number 3. What's it at now? What's it? Do you know off the top of your head? Its current take as of this recording?
Let me see. I'll try to find it, but it's it's doing.
It's one of. Has it hit? Last I saw it was like at 1.7. I think that's billion with a B.
Yeah, it's doing really, really well for itself.
Yeah. Well, it was good. I will tell you what I did. What swept my family by storm is the novelization of The Force Awakens.
Oh, interesting.
We all got through the book this week, and I'm going to say it. That Alan Dean Foster, I think he does a lot of movie adaptations. I feel like I read movie adaptations of his when I was a kid.
Yes, I think we did. I think we both did.
Crazy that he wrote this book. So it reads kind of like you would expect. what I was hoping for, and I think what I got, just not quite enough of it. What I got was just they filled in some holes of some fun little pieces that I felt like, narrative holes that I think needed to be filled in the film. And I was hoping they would make the whole experience better. And in that, I feel gratified. That feels resolved for me. There were a couple of sequences there was one in particular that you would think about that we heard a little bit about in our conversation with DC and Trent. The Force Awakens, the Force for Change contest winners, TNR Shorts from late last year, is that there was a scene that they didn't tell us about because there was no way for that to get out.
Right.
Apart from them. But it turns out Alan Dean Foster already got it out.
Did he?
Yeah, so he writes all about a scene in Maz's cantina that where in fact we do get an arm separation, courtesy of Chewbacca, which I think they should have done, because that's been a long running joke, the Wookiee that rips your arms off, that we've never seen since A New Hope, and I feel now really deeply sad that they cut that segment, because I want to see a Wookiee rips, and the fact that Chewbacca got to do it in the book I thought was great.
I heard that there's some good kind of bit with Kylo after he gets shot as to kind of what's going through his head a little bit, which helps kind of make that ending a bit work a little bit better as far as why he's not quite kicking as much butt as one might think he should.
There is, and on the flip side of that, they do a much better job of setting the stage for just how powerful the bowcaster is.
Yes.
And so, the fact that we get to hear a lot more from him about how he's doing. B, that weapon is one that you just don't recover from. That was a really great sequence to get a little bit more in the book was it's one of those. It wasn't that great.
Well, and the bowcaster though, I mean, they make that point pretty clear in the film too.
They do. They make it really, really clear.
It's like, gosh, I wonder if they're going to be bringing this bowcaster up at some point.
Yeah, right.
Because everybody is talking about how great it is.
Talking about the bowcaster. You wonder why aren't there more bowcasters?
Exactly. If it's such a powerful weapon.
Yeah. Why do we have one in the universe?
And why is this the first time that Han Solo's borrowed it and tried it out?
Right. So that was not resolved in the book. Alas. But there were some good bits in the book, and so I'm not sure it's on my top recommended list. But if you're a nerd for the Star Wars stuff, I'll tell you what. We also downloaded Lost Stars, which is a YA story that actually tells a story of kids going into the Imperial Academy. And what I love so much about it is that it's told from the perspective of these kids who don't know anything about a rebellion. And so it's like, hey, you kind of feel like, yes, I would love to join the North Korean army. I don't know that there's a world around me that I don't know that these guys are kind of crazy and that it turns out we're the galactic bad guys. And so, they join because of the shiny ships, and they join because, there's prestige. And then, over the course of the story, they fall apart because, one of them realizes that there is a world beyond the Empire, and it's called the Rebellion. And so we get a parting of ways. But it ends up being a fun little YA story that in the universe that it was actually a better read than the Force Awakens novelization. So, and I'm sure, and I am a total novice in Star Wars books. So if anybody has any recommendations for great in-universe, in-canon Star Wars books, I would love to hear the recommendation, because I would dive into those. I'm having a good time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff.
There you go. At Pete Wright on Twitter. Let me know. Shall we tell the people where we're from, or do you have anything else?
No, where are we from?
Hey, everybody, this is The Next Reel. I'm Pete Wright, and that right over there is Andy Nelson.
Yo.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, the third in our series of the films of David Mamet as writer, with the 1992 adaptation of his own play, Glengarry Glen Ross. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show on iTunes, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to head over to the site and check out the gear store. We do this show because we love it, but we also need your support. Buy a mug, or buy a shirt, or buy a poster, or a scarf, or a duvet cover, and know that with every purchase, you are supporting this show and all the series that we're doing here at The Next Reel. Thank you so much. And for all of you who have ever had to go on a sit with Bruce and Harriet Nyborg, you should head over to The Next Reel's Instagram, #PonyPrize, #GuessTheMovieChallenge.
And since Stephen Smart is busy desperately working to sell his own crappy leads so that he can get his own cup of coffee, I'm filling in to let you know that @Fegfee is a closer. Damn, that's right.
Nice.
Fegfee is definitely getting his cup of coffee this week after nailing it after just having the image up for 35 minutes. Holy cow.
Wow.
Way to go, Fegfee. You are a closer. You get your cup of coffee. The movie was The Man with the Golden Arm, 1955 Otto Preminger film, starring Frank Sinatra. And that may be a record. So congrats, Fegfee.
5 minutes. That is bananas.
That is crazy fast. So, Fegfee is yet again entered to win the 2016 Pony Prize.
Love it. We do have some follow-up from a dear friend of the show, Ben Lott, with the Blot Spot.
Yes, we do. Somehow I enjoyed The Untouchables despite its best efforts to bug me. That says a lot. There were moments when I found the score distracting instead of fitting. Sorry if that's sacrilegious to say about Morricone. I don't really think so. I mean, when you've written as many scores
too, right?
When you've written that many scores as Morricone has, I think you're going to hit those points sometimes. So it's totally fine. The death scenes were somewhat over-dramatized. I think we agree with that. And if I thought the legal logic of the verdict was sketchy, that was nothing compared to switching the juries. Not to mention just how horribly unconvincing Costner was as Elliot Ness. I must agree with you, Andy. This is the one film where calling him a 2x4 really seems to fit. Yet despite all these negatives, I found the movie fun to watch and engaging. Maybe it was just the great work of Connery and De Niro, but I liked it a lot more than I think it deserved. Your rank 185, my rank 63.
Let's just look at how introspective that last line really is, because I think that's the zinger. I liked it a lot more than I think it deserved.
Yes.
That's awesome. All right, Andy, I think it's time. Let's do trailers. I'm going to go first because speaking of surprises, wow, Andy, 10 Cloverfield Lane. This film surprised me. I knew at the end of Cloverfield, the original film, the monster film, we'd done it on the show.
Oh, yes.
At the end of Cloverfield, when all the press was coming around, and it was doing well in the box office, they said, is there going to be a sequel? And what they said, and I don't have the source of this, but this is just my sense memory of it, is what they said, we would love to continue to explore this universe, this Cloverfield universe, but whatever we do is probably not going to be a straight-up prequel or sequel. But we do want to explore the universe, right?
Yeah.
That was my memory of it. And then we get the trailer for 10 Cloverfield Lane. And the tagline is monsters come in many forms. I don't know if this is the trailer or the spiritual sequel of Cloverfield, the original. I don't know. It stars John Goodman, John Gallagher Jr., Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and it looks like a kidnapping story or some sort of John Goodman plays a guy who is somehow holding Mary Elizabeth Winstead and John Gallagher hostage in some way, shape, or form in a bunker. And you get the sense that he was trying to protect them. Maybe it's hey, it was the 60s and we stayed down here during the missile crisis that we thought was happening, and nobody's ever come back up again. And what they come up to explore, we don't know. We just get a brief flash that there's something going on outside when one of them tries to escape, and then but it looks like a really intense kind of locked room thriller. And my hunch is it takes place in the Cloverfield universe.
Yeah, seems to.
Now, then I go read the IMDb bio. So that was all my assumption. It says here, waking up from a car accident, a young woman finds herself in the basement of a man who says he saved her life from a chemical attack that has left the outside uninhabitable. And therein lies the mystery. What'd you think?
It reminded me of the opening of season 2 of Lost. Yep. When we see Desmond in the bunker, just doing his thing. You don't even realize he's in a bunker until the alarm goes off, and all of a sudden he kind of goes and it's like, what the heck's going on? And he looks through his little thing and he sees Locke like looking through the window or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly, but that's exactly what this whole thing reminded me of, because you have no real sense that it's in a bunker until it hits that point. It is really interesting. I think that there's something really interesting going on with the story here. And I guess for me, I don't know if it matters if it's a Cloverfield sequel or not. I think it looks really interesting. If it does end up being kind of a sequel in the Cloverfield universe, I think that's great. If it's just its own little story, I think that's cool too, because either way, it looks like a compelling story.
I think so too. I hope it's in the universe. I don't know what to expect. It comes from director Dan Trachtenberg. And Dan Trachtenberg, what a funny history that guy has. He was a host of an internet show, a podcast called The Totally Rad Show with Jeff Kanata and Alex Albrecht for a long time. And he's been just kind of in and around the geek broadcasting circles for a long time. His films as director, he did Kickin', apparently did a short based on the Portal universe, the game universe called Portal No Escape, which I haven't seen, but now I'm really excited to. Portal was one of my very favorite games of 2000. Gosh, well, it feels like it's been a long time. Anyhow, so he's done a couple of things. This suddenly is a big film, and he is directing it, and so I'm thrilled to see him get this kind of a bump in his career. So it should be an interesting thing to see. He's a talented guy, so here's hoping. Fingers crossed that this works for Dan.
I hope so. It looks like it's going to be a fun one, so I know I'll be there.
And it comes out pretty darn soon, March 11th, 2016, so get ready.
Awesome.
What do you got?
Well, mine is about another monster, the Money Monster.
Oh, this looks intense.
This looks really good, and I'm hoping it is. Jodie Foster as a director has kind of been a little hit or miss with me. But this really doesn't look like anything else that she's directed. This looks like kind of just a really intense thriller, and I kind of like what they're doing here. I'm hoping that this does something that makes for a really gripping, intense look at kind of the everything going on. It's timely, the way that Wall Street and just the financial market and everything, and how it's affecting people, and the crashes and all that sort of stuff, how it affects people, and also these TV personalities who say, buy, sell, all that sort of stuff. And I love the way that it's tying all that in. And I think this could be a network type of film, and I would love to see that actually happen. I don't know if it will. It does ring to be a little bit Hollywood, with George Clooney and Julia Roberts playing kind of the two leads here. But at the same time, I think it's very thrilling and gripping. And, I want to believe that this is going to do well. Everything seems to be, all the pieces are in place. I'm just hoping it actually pulls it off. I'm not familiar with these screenwriters, Alan DeFiore, Jim Koof, and Jamie Linden. I'm not that familiar with them. We Are Marshall, Dear John, a couple films like that.
We Are Marshall. You've seen that, right?
No, I haven't seen it. I mean, I'm familiar with the film. I've never seen it. It looked to be kind of, looking at the trailer, I have a good understanding of what to expect from the film.
Oh, you do? Yeah, no, you do.
Yeah.
But Matthew Fox was great.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Koof has written stuff like National Treasure, Rush Hour, grim. So I mean, some fun things there. Snow Dogs, stuff like that, and then Alan DeFiore. What's he written? Also grim, and a lot of grim stuff. Yeah, he's really working on that stuff. So I mean, none of them have credits that scream, strong, kind of a thriller about something like this. But, I still think that it could be something that they pull off. It looks really compelling. I don't know. What'd you think?
I thought it looked fantastic. It seems exactly like the film I expect from George Clooney right now. He is moving into this stage in his career where his films are taking an activist bent. He has a strong, he wears his politics so firmly on his sleeve, and I think rightfully so. In terms of his role as an artist to hold up a mirror of some element of our culture that we need to that he believes we need to be more aware of. I think that's I think that's admirable. I love that he's doing that with his notoriety, and I think this film looks really intense, even if you don't agree necessarily with the politics. It's a tough one though for me to imagine. I think the group that doesn't agree with the politics is going to be rather small, wealthy but rather small.
Yeah. But I am concerned that it might be wearing its opinions too much on its sleeve, and it may to me when I watch this trailer, that seems the Hollywoodishness of it.
Yep.
It comes across in saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm a message movie packed in an action thriller."
Yeah,
and that's kind of my concern. But, George Clooney, Grant Heslov as producers, they have done some good stuff. So it's possible that it goes the other way.
I'm excited for it. I like it. And I think I don't know. I think I get more excited about message movies than maybe you do.
It's hard to say. But this one opens May 13th. So, coming up just at the head of summer.
I like it. Andy, you can't close them. You go home and you tell your wife your troubles, because one thing counts in this life. Get them to sign on the line which is dotted.
Let me have your attention for a moment. Put that coffee down. Let's talk about something important. Because we're adding a little something to this month's sales contest. As you all know, first prize is a Cadillac Eldorado. You want to see second prize? Second prize is a set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired. We should stand up and strike back. Somebody should do something to them.
Hell exists on Earth?
Yes.
What can you do?
I gotta tell you, I'm ready to do the Dutch.
I know what I'll do. I'll go out and rob everybody blind and go to Argentina.
You think you're a thief?
We're just talking.
We are?
Yeah, we're just speaking about it.
Speaking about it is an idea. We're not actually talking about it.
No.
It's a robbery.
There's a robbery? No.
And what is it we're so afraid of?
All you need, a little boost.
Tonight is the thing.
So be it.
What happened? What happened?
We had a slight burglary.
Criminals come and they steal the phones. They stole the phones. They stole the... Oh.
You robbed the office.
Oh, sure, I robbed the office. Oh, sure.
You did that?
Did you get out of here?
How can you talk to me that way?
Are you talking to me?
When I talk to the police, I get nervous.
You know who doesn't?
Oh,
Thieves.
what's your name?
Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon, Alec Baldwin, Ed Harris, Alan Arkin, from the Pulitzer Prize winner, Glengarry Glen Ross.
This is how we keep score, Bubby.
Glengarry Glen Ross, Andy, 1992 adaptation of Mamet's own stage play. This one directed by James Foley. It stars everybody, all men, and most of them nominated or now having won Academy Awards in some shape or form. This is a very talented cast of white guys.
It really is.
In terms of throwing white guys on screen. White older men.
How fitting, considering the Oscar nominations. Let's talk about more white guys.
Oh, jeez, I know, right? This is not that show. Al Pacino.
Spike Lee, you can still tune in.
Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon, Alec Baldwin, Alan Arkin, Ed Harris, Kevin Spacey, Jonathan Pryce, Bruce Altman, Jude Cicciolela.
Yeah, you say that one.
Cicciolela. I'm going to go with Cicciolela.
Just say Jude C.
Jude C.
Who loves you, baby?
And a couple of other guys who stand around in the background.
And there's a lady.
I guess that's true. There is a lady.
The coat check girl, Lori Tanchin.
It's a lady, the only lady.
Yep.
Lady. This is an amazing cast. This talking about this is kind of a behind the scenes. It's a behind the scenes film of what goes on in a real estate office circa late 1980s. How did this one hit you? And again, we'll start with from the perspective of David Mamet and what characterizes a David Mamet script. How did this one hit you?
This was my first David Mamet experience with David Mamet, if that makes sense. Like I had seen The Untouchables before this. There are things that I had seen that Mamet had done that felt, just like other sorts of movies. This was the first time I had experienced anything of his that was actually like really his, that I could say like this was a play of his, this was something that he wrote, this has Mamet-speak. This to me defines David Mamet, and this is kind of what I've come to expect when I watch David Mamet projects. And I listen to David Mamet dialogue. The way that the dialogue is written here, the way the characters move, the way that their motivations change constantly as they're talking, that to me says David Mamet. And I don't know. I didn't see this in theaters. I rented this sometime soon afterward, and immediately
you would have been like 10.
No.
What would you been? Oh, 1992. Yeah, right. No, that's right. You would not have been 10.
No, I would not have been 10.
I was going to say, I also did not see it in theaters, but I was a child. I was not a child.
You were not. Yeah, well, you were, actually. I knew you.
I was a budding mathematician. That's arithmetician to you.
It's a great story. I mean, I enjoy the characters. I enjoy kind of this journey of desperation that we kind of watch them go through here over the hour and 40 minutes. I have a great time with this story. I really get into everything going on here. This time I had some little squibbles, I guess, with some of Foley's direction, but for the most part, I had a great time rewatching this one.
What I love so much about what characterizes Mamet-speak for me is his ability to write the words that one is thinking when one is at their most desperate. Do you know what I'm saying? There is a sense when I hear these guys talking, and they are really, particularly Arkin, Alan Arkin. I mean, he's just amazingly desperate in this film. And the way his language is formed as a result of that desperation strikes me as iconically Mamet. That is a real skill that he has. And all of these guys are desperate. Every one of them is struggling in some way, shape, or form with their power being sucked, vacuumed out of their hands. And it starts early in the film for some of them. It manifests later in the film for others, but no one in here, all the way down to the detectives in the crime scene, is able to really exist authentically in their power zone. This is what happens when you just throw a bunch of desperate rats on a sinking ship. You know what I mean? And that, I think, is a space in which Mamet really excels.
I love there's a scene when Alan Arkin and Ed Harris are driving, and the way that Alan Arkin plays those, it's not even full sentences.
No, right.
It's just like these little like half lines that he has, but that is like, it's so good. It's like that is exactly what comes through so well in Mamet-speak, and just the way that. Yeah, you're right. It's the character thinking, and they're starting to verbalize something, and their mind is kind of meandering as they kind of are, thinking about something else, and it reflects so much of kind of the it's interesting because I guess you can say it does reflect the subtext of what's going on, because there are thoughts that they're thinking and their mouth is moving and talking, but the way that their brain is moving, it's actually causing them to kind of stop talking or change the way they talk, change their motivation. And in all of that, that's kind of, you can get the subtext underneath that as to kind of the way that their brain is thinking and what's really kind of going on there.
That's exactly right. And in fact, I found this quote that I want to read because I find it funny, especially given the context that you just framed his ability as a writer. He is asked by an interviewer, I think it was in Variety, he says, "How many passes does it take to create perfect dialogue?" And Mamet's answer: "That's a really good question. I'm not sure I know the answer. I do it fairly spontaneously, and then sometimes, for various reasons, it has to be recrafted. I used to be really good at that, but it gets more difficult as I get older, just because my brain is failing. I have less brain cells because long before any of you guys were born, there was something called the 60s. That's where the brain cells were." And that has put all of his writing for me in a different frame. The other character I think that really exemplifies Mamet, that sort of desperate Mamet-speak, is Jonathan Price's character, James Link. His desperation and his absolute shame as a husband, as he comes to apologize to Al Pacino and try to get him to rescind the contract, is brilliantly, desperately, breathlessly Mamet in my eyes.
And it's Jonathan Pryce was so well cast for that role because he carries that sort of, just something about the tone in his voice, but he has that quality that feels desperate. Like there's an extra sense of desperation because his voice has this unsurety to it that I think works really well for that. It's
not a role that I feel comfortable with Jonathan Pryce playing either, because I'm used to seeing him in roles where he has so much confidence and so much just panache. And I don't. My memory of him as an actor is not of him in a role like this. So every time I see it, I am a little bit shocked and super impressed that he's able to sort of convey the feeling of what it is to be a complete and utter whelp.
It's funny because I think that that character actually reflects really well his character in Brazil, which of course I love so much.
Yeah.
So I do see a lot of that in him in that character. But then you look at what he's done, like he's freaking the Perón in Evita. He's really, he does a great job of playing a wide swath of characters, and I really enjoy seeing him in so many things. But I think that it is great seeing him here. And with these other characters, he does such a great job carrying his own weight in this group.
He is fantastic. I can't remember. Was he in? Why do I have this memory of him in Miss Saigon? Wasn't he the crazy guy in Miss Saigon? I can't seem to find
in the Broadway version.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, that's going to have to be for follow up. But that's my memory is that he was in Miss Saigon, but definitely Evita. Anyway, he's an amazingly talented actor, and it's so fun to see him in this cast, particularly in the almost ensemble sequence at the end as everything is blowing up and the interview needs to come around and the detectives are there and the contract needs to be canceled and Arkin is going berserk. And everybody is in that incredibly confined, claustrophobic space of the sales room, and he is just helpless in the corner, and I just adore it.
Well, and what's interesting in that scene, just focusing on that a little more, is that it's written in a way where it's not him really getting angry at them, saying, "Look, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this." He's really talking about how weak he is, and it's this sense of shame that comes through that you just don't see so often in that sort of scene. It's really interesting, and it's played so well. And yes, he played the engineer in the West End original production of Miss Saigon.
That's what it was. Thank you for finding that. That's my memory of him. I'm glad that came through. I think you're right, and I think that's an important thing. And we talk a little bit about James Foley, and kind of general opinion of Foley. But my opinion of Foley's work on this film is, and I don't think he gets enough credit as a director because Mamet's name is so big on this film, right? His reputation is so big, it looms over this film, that I think we lose sight of the fact that James Foley directed it. But
Well, yeah, so I'll come back to that.
okay.
Finish your point.
Well, my point is I really love the staging generally around this entire small set. I love how they do it. And in particular in this sequence, one of the things that we get out of Jonathan Pryce, again, part of his gift as a physical actor, is his ability to be small, to play small, and yet continue to be something around which everything else can orbit, right? Because that sequence is unique. It's a sequence where he comes in and just wants to stand out of the way. Just give me the contract and stand out of the way. But as a result of his placement in that room, everything else revolves around him, right? Roma, the energy around Roma is all to get everybody to shut up so he can focus on Link. But everybody needs to talk to Roma. The detective needs to talk to Roma. Roma's trying to get Arkin to shut up. All of this energy that is building and building and building toward Williamson's office is all about, as like the dominoes fall, they all lead back to Link and his entirely tiny physical presence in the back of the room. It's really magnificent to watch.
Would you say he's the central link?
Well, I wouldn't.
Not to put too fine a point on it. But yes, I completely agree. Right. I definitly agree. That was done very deftly.
I think that so far this is not the movie of Jonathan Pryce. However, it's a funny thing. Have you ever seen the play, the original play?
Nope.
You ever read it?
I have read bits and pieces of it.
It's a funny thing because this film is a unique adaptation, and it's unique. Certainly, in my experience, I have not read that many plays since college, but it is a unique adaptation because, in my opinion, the screenplay bests the stage play, and that is a strange thing.
Well, I mean, having Mamet adapt his own play, I think, was very smart because he had we already have talked about some of his other films. Now, The Untouchables happened after he wrote the play. The Verdict happened before he wrote the play, but both of them happened before he wrote the screenplay for this. And I think in his time in Hollywood, I think that he had started getting a good sense of kind of what works on the screen and what works on the stage. And I think that this is a great signpost for him, saying now he has a good understanding of the two, and he can take what he's done on the stage successfully, and he's found a way to adapt it to a film that helps open it up a little bit. He's added some scenes. He's changed things around a little bit. The stage play, the first act, all takes place in the Chinese restaurant. The second act takes place in the office the next day. Now we've got more stuff going on in the office. In the first half of the film, we've got Shelley going off to the house to go talk to one of the people that he's trying to sell to. We've got scenes in cars. I mean, they've done a good job of opening this up and giving us more around the world, letting us see a little bit more. Yes, it still is very, very dialogue heavy. I mean, it still is very much the play, but at the same time, they have found a way to kind of expand it. And I think that it's Mamet who really took to that and found the right way to tell this story and open it up and give us more of an actual film rather than a play adapted.
Although, one of the things that you start to see as the more and more of these productions of the play happen since the film is you see them inserting some of the sequences that Mamet wrote exclusively for the film, which I find fascinating. Speaking
specifically of Alec Baldwin's scene.
Yes, absolutely, which is interesting in that it defines the tone of the entire experience of these sales guys. I mean, it is the thing that goes and pivots our entire understanding of their worldview. And it is a long scene in which Blake, Baldwin's character, comes to give them a motivational sales speech.
Yeah, it's a scene you don't forget, and I think if this film had found an audience better, it's the sort of role that an actor gets a supporting actor nod for, and people question going, well, geez, they only had that one scene, but it's such a good scene. Alec Baldwin plays that character so well. So there's so much spite and anger and force in that. I didn't even time it, but 5, 7, 10 minutes, whatever, however long he is on screen.
Definitely more than 5.
Yeah, it's just so intense that you can't help but take notice and pay attention to this guy who's just beating everybody down on screen. It's just fantastic to watch, and it's created some just absolute classic zingers.
You know what it does. This is the world building scene, right? I mean, this is we open in the restaurant and we see that there is a lot of frustration for these guys, and we hear their individual stories, but not until we see most of them in the room being berated by this power player of a salesman sent to them from the Don, the Mitch and Murray. Not until we see him. He's the one in that 7 minutes that defines the stakes and builds the world for us. Without that sequence, I don't think the story works as well. I don't think we feel the level of desperation as much as we do with him in it. It is magnificent.
Yeah, and world building is a good way to describe that scene. It's interesting that was not in the stage play. Because the stage play still sells it well. I mean, you still have all those scenes kind of talking about the leads, and I wanted to get the Glengarry leads because I need to make the sale. I can do it, and all this sort of stuff. I mean, all that stuff is still there.
But it's all character stakes, right? It's not world stakes.
No, absolutely. And I think that's what makes the stage play work really well. But I think for the film, if they had not had this particular scene in there, I don't think it would have been nearly as strong. You're just not getting a sense of, like you're saying, this world.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's really magnificent. In general, it's by and large a word for word. The actual dialogue is nearly word for word, with the exception of the additional stuff. He also did some crazy cuts to just sort of intercut sequences that were in the play were delivered as straight. They're now intercut between the different pairs of sales guys, and we also are introduced to a couple of sequences. One in particular where we see Shelley go and actually meet with a customer, and we get to see, in his case, the shame of walking around with your hat in your hand, being sent packing. After shamelessly sneaking into his house.
Well, and that's something that's interesting that should be said about these characters. I mean, they're pretty despicable.
They're despicable.
They're all criminals. They're all lying and conniving their way into the lives of these poor investors who made the mistake of sending in a card saying that they might be interested in something like these properties. It's just terrible. I mean, and I feel for this guy who has to deal with this sleazy salesman who weasels his way into his house. I mean, it's terrible. But at the same time, what I love about the play is you still feel so much for Shelley, even though he is one of these weaselly salesmen. You get this sense of this backstory with him, with this daughter who's in the hospital, and his wife, and all of the stuff going on in his life that's all hinted at, and you get little bits and pieces of conversation, but you don't really know. But there's enough there so you get this real sense of this guy who's just desperate, and he's really fighting for his day-to-day living, right? I mean, he's really just pushing. This is the life that he's ended up in, whether he chose it or not. This is where he is. And he has to follow through, and he has to do A, B, and C in order to get to, the paycheck at the end of it. And it's and clearly, I mean, he's good at it. He knew what he was doing, at least at one point. As he says, they even Kevin Spacey's character acknowledges he was great at a particular point in time. He may not be there now, but he was a great salesman. And, and I think this scene is really difficult, and it's painful to watch because you don't like him as this salesman in this house, but he's a character that you do like, and it's difficult to watch. It's really interesting to get those two sides of this character as you're seeing him go through the motions. That's
one of the most elegant ways to describe it, is that you know that you hate this guy. You hate him for what he does and what he does to people. Even though it's never explicitly said that what these guys are doing is, necessarily illegal, all we've seen of the property they're selling is in a glossy brochure. We don't ever get any sort of substance. That's a little bit of the MacGuffin of the thing. But what we get from their character is that they're, as you say, they're shifty. We want him to succeed because of how artfully and subtly Mamet has built his backstory for us through just snippets of one-sided conversation between him and his daughter. We get this sense of his life situation, and we want him to succeed in spite of our feelings about him. And I find that just terrific.
It's a good sign of a solid writer, and I don't know, I think this is a really strong sense of what works so well when Mamet is writing. And I mean, we have seen, I mentioned it last week, we do see this sense of desperation that he has introduced in both The Verdict and The Untouchables. Men in desperate situations, trying to accomplish something, trying to make something happen. And I think this is the film in our series where it really just packs a punch, and it does everything right, especially in relation to Mamet working at the top of his own game, I think.
I think so too. It makes me, I can't help but think of Death of a Salesman, and this was, the cast apparently referred to the film as Death of an Effing Salesman. As they made the film, it's Death of a Salesman was written in 1949. Arthur Miller. It's a Pulitzer and Tony winning play. It's been revived many times. It is a fantastic work that really defines the culture of the American dream in this major cultural transformation that was occurring as a result of the end of the war and the massive growth in consumer culture. And that was those were incredible forces that all come to a head through the eyes of Willy Loman as he, as an older salesman, is trying to figure out how to make his life something worth living in his sort of twilight days. And he's less and less able to do it, and the world around him is less and less willing to listen to him. He is also kind of a despicable guy, and that ends up making it a fascinating thing to watch and a wonderful parallel to Glengarry Glen Ross. It is to watch all of these guys essentially embody some component of the Willy Loman ethic, and in fact, the visual symbolism around the sort of nature of what is the American dream, the discussion in Death of a Salesman around the American dream is, you can have anything you want if you are somehow likable. If you are good looking, if you cut a good line in your suits, if you walk in with confidence, you don't have to know anything, you don't have to study hard, you can be somebody if you just carry yourself right? If you're popular. And in this film, we get sort of the answer to each of those things. We get to see the guy who is good-looking and confident and charismatic and persuasive through Roma, and yet he is not successful ultimately. We get to see the guy who is shamelessly sneaking in like a wet dog, sneaking in across the carpet with his tail between his legs. We get to see all of these characters essentially as an answer, as a punchline to the story that Miller set out in 1949, and I think that's really beautiful. Even the visual symbolism is, we get so much of the red and the blues that you get to it sort of harkens to this American ideal. Like you can't help but see it in the very opening sequences of the film that drives you to ask the question, is this our America? Is this what we aspire to? And in terms of our vocation or what we work for, what we live for. And I find that really beautiful.
Yeah, it's interesting. The first half of the film is very, it's at night. There's a lot of reds and blues, like you said. There's also a lot of greens in there. And I don't know, I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen anything about the production design as far as what sort of symbolism they were doing, but I love what you're saying about the reds and the blues. It's interesting, like the greens, maybe that's kind of the hinting of the money and everything else that's kind of going on.
And jealousy, right? Green is the color of
With
jealousy.
envy, right.
Right, envy.
Absolutely. And it's so wet. I mean, goodness gracious, there's so much rain going on in the first half of the movie. It is like a torrential downpour.
Did you have a problem like every time they opened a car door in the rain, like all that rain went in the car? Like, does that give you trouble? I have a real personal problem, like watching it. I'm like, shut the damn door. Shut the door. The car is full of water. Shut the door.
No, yes. I mean, you certainly deal with that more than I do. And I don't get quite as much rain, but I certainly try to avoid it when I do.
You were saying something much more substantive, I'm sure.
No, but it's just interesting how wet and kind of how the first half of the film is really like these characters are constantly drowning. Like there is this emphasis on these guys really trying to stay afloat. And I think that's really interesting. And it's not until the second half of the film when you see, a sense of some hope, I guess you could say, in some of these characters. Certainly, Levine has more hope as he's kind of gotten this sale with the Nyborgs, although he learns later that that's probably nothing. But he's very positive. Of course, you also have this big investigation and everything, and all of the colors are gone. I mean, no more reds, blues, greens, none of that. It's all gone. It's really just kind of this monochromatic blue-gray, kind of like post-rain. Everything has kind of lost its luster, and I think that's very interesting because you get all the interesting sales bits happening as these people are so desperate in the first half. You've got the great scene with Roma as he's pitching to Link, and you've got Levine pitching to the guy in his living room, and you've got all these conversations about stealing the leads and all this great stuff as everybody's having these ideas. And then the second half, it's kind of just answering all of that, but it just kind of loses all of its luster as now they're dealing with a lot of the realities of that. And I think that the symbolism and the way that they play with the colors in the film, it's pretty interesting. I don't know if they did anything like this on the stage play. I have no sense I didn't see anything as to like how they played with the production design in the play itself, but I really enjoy what they did here in the film.
I did too. I think it's just gorgeous. I think we should talk about the cast, and we should. I'd like to start with the most charismatic, the talented Ricky Roma. I would buy from this guy. If he met me in a bar and he sidled up next to me and he had that conversation that offered me a chance to essentially confess, right? I mean, that's what he has become. He is in this film, in the Chinese restaurant. He is essentially the vessel of confession, and but he is confessing on behalf of the naive Mr. Link. And I think that is really artful sales technique.
He's got the Paul Harvey sales approach.
He sure does. Yes, he does. Get into the story.
Yeah, I really enjoy watching Pacino as Ricky Roma. I mean, he was nominated for Golden Globe. He was nominated for an Oscar. He did great playing this character. I believe it was Joe Mantegna who originally played him on the Broadway show, or I don't know if it was Broadway or one of the early iterations. It might have been Chicago when it played there. I think he would have been great in the role too, but man, Pacino brings so much to this character. It's just great watching him kind of find his way, use this really interesting sales approach to get this guy to buy. I love watching it. I mean, he does. He just sells it so easily. It's like by the time you're done, you're like, yeah, here's my money. I'll buy 2.
Yeah, right. But what's so interesting about this, and it took me a while to get this, is that the next day when Link comes back in, we actually, and he says, the way he presents it is, my wife wants me to cancel the deal. And at first, you think, okay, well, he made the deal at the Chinese restaurant, and then he went home and told his wife, and he couldn't do it. She didn't like that he did that without her or whatever. But what comes out in their conversation is, in fact, that Roma went to their house and ate with them, broke bread with them, and in fact must have sold both of them together, that this was happening, and she's the one who had the change of heart overnight. And I find that fascinating. It again talks to what he is imbuing this character, what Mamet is imbuing this character with, that level of skill to be able to go into the family home and maintain composure and continue to sell, through the confessional experience with the husband, to continue to sell that with the wife. I think that's a great bit that it took me a long time to figure out.
Yeah, he's a really interesting character, and I don't know if I caught that either initially. I think it's one of those things that you kind of pick up on. It's one of those bits that it's like, I don't know if it matters that I fully got it the first time. I think what mattered is that I got what was happening in the scene, and it's just, I think it's nice extra bit that you get as you kind of watch the story multiple times, where you start going, oh, okay, and now I see what was happening. Right, he had gone home and all this stuff with the wife. Yeah, right. I like that.
Pacino was nominated for some awards for this.
Considering how many actors are in this, and great actors in great performances, I really find it a shame that he was the only one who actually got nominated. And the only reason I can think that that's actually the case is because just nominations got split between the others because there were so many other great roles. I mean, I will say I was very disappointed to see that Jack Lemmon did not get nominated for this. And I actually, in my head, I had always convinced myself that he also had been nominated. So I don't know why I thought that, other than the fact that he's brilliant in his performance here. But going back and seeing that it only got nominated for the one Oscar, I really was kind of a bit taken aback by that.
Yeah, it's. What do you think about the fact that he lost to Hackman for Unforgiven?
Totally justifiable.
Okay.
That role is just, I think, one of Gene Hackman's best in a wonderful film. So I think that Gene Hackman won is totally fine. And Pacino walked away with his Oscar anyway because he got sent to the Woman Best Actor that year also.
Right. Well, I agree with you. I was a little worried that you were going to go the other way on that. So.
Oh, no.
It's interesting. It's hard for me to imagine this after, loving the film as long as I have. But after this, it was actually Al Pacino who went into one of the Broadway revivals after the film to play Shelley Levine. And I have a hard time picturing that.
That's so weird.
Right?
Yeah, that is strange. It's interesting to look at like the people who played the roles. Like Robert Prosky actually played on Broadway and Chicago as Shelley Levine. And I think he's a really interesting character choice. And I think he could have been interesting in the film, but I have a hard time seeing him do it because, man, Jack Lemmon just sells the part so well.
He really does. And he also, he got the, what was it? It was the National Board of Review Best Actor.
Yep. And he was also, I think that wherever it premiered, and I can't remember where the film actually premiered, but he got Best Actor there as well. So I mean, he is Venice Film Festival.
Mm-hmm. He's an incredible, obviously. Understates to say he's an incredible actor, but in this part, we talk about the guy losing, just trying to figure out where his power went, his sense of vulnerability that you get from him when every time he approaches Williamson, Kevin Spacey's role of Williamson as the office boss, you just get this sense of vulnerability that when he has to sort of lay himself out and beg for the good leads, and how frustrating that is, how just bone-crushing that is, that he doesn't get it.
Well, and I think what we really see here is how brilliant of an actor Jack Lemmon is, how he can take these Mamet lines and he can find different motivations for each line, and not even each line, but like different words, different sentences. You can see his motivation shifting from, oh, this one I need to be, pushing him, and this one, and then the very next line I need to be pleading, and then the very next line, I need to be just, kind of explaining this situation going on with my daughter, and then I'm fighting, and the way that he shifts, it's just it is remarkable. My mind is just it's boggled as I watch him, especially like the scene when he and Williamson, the conversation out around Williamson's car as Williamson's getting ready to leave. There's just so much going on there that Lemmon is pushing, and I'm mesmerized watching Lemmon in every scene in this film, but that one in particular, it's just like, man, he is just on fire. He is an actor who clicked clearly with Mamet's dialogue and found the right way to deliver it with this character.
He certainly did. And are you a fan of The Simpsons?
I do enjoy The Simpsons, although it's funny. As much as I love The Simpsons, I hardly ever watch it.
I do too, because it's on like season 38 now or something. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's almost not hyperbolic. Like it's a ridiculously popular show, and this character is obviously is played homage to in the role of Gil Gunderson.
Yes, I did actually go watch some Gil Gunderson clips on YouTube just to get a sense as to what they did, and it's pretty fantastic. I mean, he's just the total pathetic sales guy, and they did a great job of capturing the Shelley Levine nature, and I really enjoy that.
Totally agree. We've talked already a little bit about Alec Baldwin. And his place in this thing. The only thing I want to add is, he comes in and he talks all about these acronyms, right? Acronyms are, if you've never worked in sales, first of all, try not to. But if you ever do, just take note of the number of acronyms. They love acronyms. Sales and marketing love acronyms. You want to talk about acronyms? You got the 4 Ps. You want to do a Google search for the new 4 Ps, and you'll see 1,000 people who are trying to define marketing and define sales and define all through these ridiculous acronyms. And this one, the one that stands out is, of course, ABC, always be closing, which is a complete lampoon on these ridiculous sales acronyms, just awful. But this one is, he comes in and he writes it on the board, right? He writes ABC on the board in addition to the other AIDA, right? Have you made your decision for Christ? But this would always be closing. If you're watching the stage play and you see this happen, you would miss, and this is why I think that this scene works so well in film, and why it wasn't in the original play, because you miss how brilliant the production design, the art direction is of this film. Right behind, you think this magical sales guy has come in to teach you something, some brand new nugget of inspiration that's going to let you go out that night on a sit and change your life by closing more sales. And he writes ABC, always be closing. And in the frame, right behind the chalkboard and Alec Baldwin's head, is a poster that says ABC, always be closing, which is unbelievably stupid. And I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, it showcases how incredibly insipid these sales operations can become, that this high-powered sales guy comes in and offers you literally a retread of a poster that is above the coffee maker.
That's hilarious.
I find that hilarious. And maybe it's because I spent too much time in sales. It was really, it's touching. It's touchingly horrific, this experience. It's really good. It is really, really good. Did you ever, did you do sales? Were you ever a sales guy?
I never did sales.
You never did Cutco?
Nope.
Oh man, I did Cutco. I did a lot of multi-level when I was a kid.
I think the only sales I ever did, if you can count, would be going door to door selling like my newspaper subscriptions.
Yeah.
That's probably as much sales as I ever did.
Well, it was probably before the internet, right? You probably made bank. You were a cute little blonde kid going door to door.
Yes, I'd bat my cute little eyes.
You did. Oh,
would you like to buy some newspapers from me?
I sold magnets and water filters, water filtration systems for like businesses. It was terrible. Supplements. Oh, did I ever do supplements? Yeah.
I think there was a point in college where I actually was looking at doing one of those summer, like, travel the country and sell steak knives door to door or whatever. And I never quite managed to sign up for that. I think that's probably for the best.
Because then you would end up as, you would have ended up as the Baldwin character. You would have been a Blake driving the $60,000 BMW.
Yeah, probably.
I can see that as you.
That would be me.
How'd he do with everybody else? He comes in here. I've heard him referred to as a vocational terrorist, and I love that. I love that phrase. How did he do as an actor with the rest of the cast?
Well, this was a one of those films where I think Foley smartly said, "Look, we're doing a Mamet play. We need to do some rehearsals," and he had the cast come in for 3 weeks to do a full rehearsal of it and really figure out the beats and how they were going to say and the motivations in their dialogue and really get a sense of everything. And my understanding is Baldwin, he only had this one bit, and I don't know if he was there for rehearsals or what, but he really didn't have the sense of camaraderie that the rest of the cast did because they had been kind of around each other so much. So when he came in, they really resented him. And a lot of that was because his character is such a despicable character. But he kind of used that and just kind of went with that and took that kind of that resentment that they had and just played with it and really used that to his advantage as he did the scene. And I think it just made for a really strong character.
Absolutely. His primary interaction is with the fantastic Ed Harris as Dave Moss in this particular sequence. Ed Harris is, he's so Ed Harris in this film. He's an interesting character because he's sort of, the game he talks is Ricky Roma's game. He talks as if he is in Roma's league. But if he were really in Roma's league, he would not have even been at that meeting. Because the one guy would not have given Blake the time of day is Ricky Roma, and he's the one guy who wasn't there. And so when you see Dave Moss, it becomes much easier to see just how sort of hollow his character is as a person, that he is sitting there and just having to take it, just gut it out.
What I like about seeing Ed Harris in this role is I get so lost sometimes in Ed Harris's characters of him being like this great, like Apollo 13 type of character. I really like that Ed Harris. He's so strong. He's so, just that good guy. He's the sort of guy that you really want to root for. And seeing a guy like Dave Moss when Ed Harris is playing him, that is an Ed Harris that I don't get so much, but I really enjoy that Ed Harris. And yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think he plays that part really well of the guy who wants to play the game, but he really, he's the guy behind this robbery. I mean, there's something much darker going on with him. He's
also the guy who, when everything gets super serious, he leaves screaming obscenities to everyone else.
Yes.
He's that guy. Alan Arkin, just lovely performance from Mr. Arkin.
He's always good. And I what I love about Alan Arkin is he does this schlub so well.
Yeah.
He plays it so well and he's so good at it. And it's just, I don't know what that says about him. But then, Little Miss Sunshine is totally not the same sort of character. And so he does a nice variety. And I think that it's really fun seeing him as this frustrated guy who not only does he get screwed over by the company, but then Moss also tries to screw him over by saying, hey, you know what? You're guilty now too, because if I go through with it, you're guilty before the fact. And it's just...
He just always walks into it. Like he just walks in. I think that defines the Alan Arkin schlub scale. Like it is, he plays a really wide variety of schlubs, but it's always on that spectrum, the schlub spectrum.
Right.
The schlubstrom.
And what's great about him here is that he really is the guy who's just going to push and do everything he can to make it work. He's the last thing we see in the film as he gets on the phone and starts trying to make calls again. he is a kind of just a motivating force of pushing and trying to work his own way through the muck. He's not going to go to the lengths of stealing stuff. He's just going to push hard and try to make it and see if he can figure out how to survive on this ladder. The nice thing that works out for him is in the situation where there's 4 of them and only 2 people are going to be moving forward. 2 of them are now getting fired and arrested. So by default, he ends up making his way through and getting the set of steak knives.
He is, he's fantastic. What's interesting about him is that his character's sort of innate goodness is portrayed in such a way that it never achieves any sort of balance in the office, right? Nobody else is sort of magnetized by him. And that ends up being a really sad bit of his character. Like nobody ever is able to take his energy and feel inspired. And it ends up being just super depressing.
It is, yes.
Kevin Spacey as the office boss. This was the first thing I saw Kevin Spacey in was Usual Suspects.
Really?
Yeah.
You saw that before this?
I did. And so this was a real surprise. Because first of all, I was like, that dude can walk? No. No, this was a real surprise. And this was the film that I saw that then I thought, okay, he's going to be a major guy out of all these guys, because I knew all the other guys in this film. I knew all the other guys. But Kevin Spacey, he was the guy I thought I'm going to need to watch him.
It's funny because I, for some reason, thought you were going to say The Ref, which happened the year before Usual Suspects.
Oh, man, you are so right. My memory has just been changed. Just right here on the show. I loved The Ref. Yep.
What's funny is I saw this movie like I said, sometime shortly after it was released, and he was the one guy that I was like, oh, all these great guys. And then there's that one guy who plays the office manager. Who the hell is he? And it's funny because, I mean, he held his own up against all these other people that I recognized. And I'm like, why did they cast that guy? It's interesting that they didn't cast a big name like they cast all the other parts. But after watching this film and seeing his progression of his career, it's very clear. It's very, very clear. Yeah.
And you said it, because he's a guy who can, even though he is in that position, he's the office manager because of some family connection, because of something. He doesn't really know what he's doing, but he puts on these fantastic airs. Kevin Spacey is playing that role because he's the guy who can hold his own against Al Pacino, who can stand there and take it and look like he's meant to take it.
Absolutely. And I mean, he had been working in the business since the mid-'80s in bit parts and stuff like Heartburn and Working Girl and See No Evil, Hear No Evil and Dad. I mean, he had been out there doing stuff. But this, as I'm kind of going through his credits...
not memorable.
Yeah, nothing that was huge. I mean, he had a character arc in Wise Guy, the TV series from the late 80s, but I don't know if that's something that's really going to
I have zero memory of that.
Yeah,
zero
neither
memory.
do I. It's Glengarry Glen Ross. This is the film that, for me, stands out as the point where people start going, hey, that guy, let's get him. He's really great in that film. He can hold his own against all these characters. And now, yes, let's cast him as, this wicked senator. I mean, he's a guy that people want to cast because he's a brilliant actor. Yeah. And he certainly did a great job here.
Have you seen his acting school? Man,
I've seen
a fortune to advertise that on Facebook.
Oh, I know. I see the ads on Facebook all the time, but I have not actually seen any of them.
Me neither. But I just see his face. I'm like, ugh, God, it's Kevin Spacey's acting school again. We got a couple of other little bit parts. Bruce Altman is Larry Spannell. He plays opposite, obviously, Shelley in The Sales Call. And Jude Shalala.
Jude C.
is the detective, and he's, for me, he is always the chief of staff from 24, which is a big favorite.
Don't forget Lori Tan Chin, The coat check
The coat
girl.
check girl.
She was also in What About Bob and Ransom and Living in Oblivion.
Nice.
That's right.
From coat check girl to Ransom.
She was in Chloe and Theo earlier this year, or in 2015.
I missed that.
And she's in Orange is the New Black.
I haven't seen a single episode of it.
I've seen a couple. She's Chang in Orange is the New Black.
Don't know anything about
17 episodes.
There you go. Okay, so James Foley.
James Foley.
What do you think?
You know, if there are any problems I have with this film, it's some of the direction. I think he actually does a really good job with putting this together for the most part. I think that the parts that feel sloppy to me come in the direction and come in his ability to frame a scene with a lot of characters without getting too confusing. There are times where he crosses the line as two characters are talking to one another, and it confuses the space a little bit. And even though all of these characters are in this room, there are some wide shots where I get a good sense of where people are and stuff. The way that he cuts some of the scenes together, I start getting really confused as to where everybody is. And it's a minor quibble, but it is something that I do notice when I'm watching the film. And it's you know, I think he does a great job with the actors. I think he does a good job. We talked about the way that he and the production designer and the DP kind of came with the color scheme and everything. I enjoy all of that, but there are elements of the actual direction and just kind of structuring the scenes that I think that he could have been stronger with.
Yeah, I don't have those problems. I feel like this film, if any, stands out to me as just sort of an iconically confidently and strongly directed small set film, and I like it. I don't have a problem really with the structure of the film. I have a problem with the with other stuff that he's done, and it just sort of hurts my feelings that I find this film so good and some of the other ones not. You know what I mean? That's really the problem that I have. Fear, confidence. I was super disappointed. I really wanted that. I love con movies, and Confidence I found was really weak. And maybe it's just I've grown tired of Ed Burns, and I don't know. I'm a Rachel Weisz. I mean, come on, like it's hard to lose with her in my book, but I just found that movie really frustrating, and so. You know, overall, I think that's where my challenge comes. Although now that I know that he's directed 12 episodes of House of Cards, I feel like I need to go back and check out some of those episodes because none of them stand out as particularly frustrating to me in the same way that some of his other films are. And so I'm interested in checking out some of the more. I haven't watched any of the most recent seasons. So. Anyway, so I don't share your frustration with some of the structural stuff, and I really think this highlights his strength in putting together a film with a lot of incredibly dominant personalities and dominant characters, alpha characters on screen at once, and making them play in a way that makes sense. It makes narrative sense. It makes emotional sense. So that's where.
Yeah, it did make me curious as I rewatched this film this time, and I looked at his kind of filmography. I mean, he hadn't done a lot of big stuff before this. At Close Range was probably the biggest. Who's That Girl? I guess you could say it was kind of big, at least at the time, despite the fact that I don't think it did that well at the box office. Could be wrong there. But, I mean, this is his fifth film that he had done, and not a lot of stuff. And I just had questions as I was watching it this time. How much say did he have going in to any particular changes that he wanted to make with Mamet? Or was it really kind of what Mamet would experience in the world of theater, where the playwright is king and everybody kind of bows to the playwright, whether it's the director or whomever? And I was kind of wondering if Foley kind of had that sort of type of experience working with Mamet, where again, Mamet was king here, even though it was a film. Foley was not the man who really was behind anything. It was Mamet. And I just have that sense, especially looking at his filmography, if that really was the case here.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And another one that I bring up when you talk about, films with strong writing forces behind them. You know, you can't go too far without bringing out The Chamber, another of his, based on the book by John Grisham and the novel, or in the screenplay by William Goldman. You know, strong writing force in Hollywood. And my memory of The Chamber is that it was fair to middling.
Yes.
So I don't know that helps his case for this film or not, but you know, maybe it's just this was a film that really struck me well because of the Mamet connection. I don't know.
Well, I mean, looking at Foley's career, I feel like it's fair to say that Mamet is the reason that this film does so well.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Foley's film career, Reckless, At Close Range, Who's That Girl, After Dark, My Sweet, Glengarry Glen Ross, Two Bits, The Chamber, Fear, The Corruptor, Confidence, Perfect Stranger. Which of those films still gets talked about? If any, it's probably Glengarry Glen Ross, yes.
Easily. Oh, and interesting that he is on to direct both the new 50 Shades of Grey movies, you know, the second and third in the series. And interesting only insofar as it's as those are, I'm sure, going to be box office successes.
You think so?
Well, I mean, are you being sarcastic?
I just don't know. I don't know what to expect from those movies.
I mean, the first one was, right? I mean, that was kind of a big deal. It wasn't, I didn't see it. I heard it wasn't good.
No, I didn't think it was good, and I don't know how it did at the box office.
I'm checking, Andy, because I feel like I should know this. 50 Shades of Grey. This is real-time follow-up. 166 million. Opening weekend 85.
Out of a budget of 40.
So it was a successful film.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
Take that, Andy.
Successful enough to have two sequels. 51 and 52 Shades of Grey.
There you go. 50 Shades of Freed. I think, isn't that one the one? That's the last. It's 50 Shades Darker and 50 Shades of Freed. Something like that. It's ridiculous. Why would you do that to a perfectly good title? Yeah, 50 Shades Freed and 50 Shades Darker, but in opposite order. 2017, 2018.
Weird.
That's it. We got to move on. We've already talked a little bit about production design and art direction. Jane Muskie and William Barclay, respective. I loved the little set. I mean, it felt like the very worst of the sales offices that I've experienced.
Yeah, it was nice. I did like how it had kind of a little phone room in the back. The bathroom's right next to it. I mean, I liked kind of the way that it was laid out. I thought that was pretty nice.
All right. Your favorite, another composer in the J's.
He's one of my 10 J's, James Newton Howard.
What'd you think?
It's very jazzy. I mean, it's interesting. It's not like a favorite of mine. I used to have the soundtrack, actually. But I like the jazziness of it. It's just not one that that stands out, I guess. But the jazziness does fit with the world and with Mamet, with kind of just the whole Mamet-speak, I think. So it does have something about the music fit nicely within this.
Yeah, it's a throwback, I think, to the just sort of practically noir, right? It's got that sort of vibe to it. That it's a little bit fusion, I think, for me, a little bit fusion, but I really like it. I mean, I really think it, like you said, it really fits.
Yeah. And, Al Jarreau's song, Blue Skies, I mean, it's not his song, but the song Blue Skies that Al Jarreau performs at the end, I think also works nicely with the story. And the fact that Blue Skies comes up right after this debacle of, catching the guy who broke into the guys who broke into the office and everything, I think that there's something really nice about that. Plus, just the version that Jarreau sings, I think is really, there's almost a nice intensity that he brings to it that I like quite a bit.
Absolutely. How did this one get made? Did you look into that at all?
Yeah, this one, it's funny. When the play came out, of all people, Irvin Kershner, i.e. Empire Strikes Back, he actually really enjoyed the play and wanted to make it. He wanted to direct the movie version of this. He talked to producer Jerry Tarkovsky, who hooked up with B-movie producer Stanley Zupnik. Those guys got involved They talked to Mamet. Mamet wanted $500,000 to for the rights of the play, and then another $500,000 to be the screenplay adaptation. And so a cool $1 million for Mamet. So these guys raised the money. And then they came up with the rest of the money to get this film made. They couldn't get, no studio was interested. They had to go through cable and video companies. There was a German TV station involved, an Australian movie theater chain, some banks, and then finally New Line Cinema. Over the span of 4 years, they kind of pulled all this money together to make this little movie. It's only $12.5 million, not a huge budget. Initially, Pacino wanted to be involved. He was, I think at the time, in American Buffalo, another Mamet play, and so he couldn't be in one of the different iterations of the plays of this. But he really wanted to be in the film, and so he signed on. Jack Lemmon signed on, and then Irvin Kershner dropped out because other things going on in his life. And then Pacino dropped out because of things going on in his life. Alec Baldwin had also been signed on, and then he dropped out because of contract negotiations. And then somehow through all of this, it finally ended up in James Foley's lap. And he said, yeah, I'd be interested in this. And he and Pacino had been talking about doing some jobs together. Somehow he's like, was talking to Pacino about it. And Pacino was like, yeah, I was going to be in that. And so he got Pacino back in the movie. And Lemmon was still involved. And then through that, these guys, they were able to get the rest of these people, and a lot of people wanted to be involved. I mean, it definitely is an actor showcase. De Niro, Bruce Willis, Richard Gere, Joe Mantegna, who, like I said, was in the Chicago and Broadway iterations of the stage play. They all wanted to be involved, and you know, I think that the right people came together to make this thing. There were problems with these two producers, Tarkovsky and Zupnik. They got into a big fight, I guess, midway through, and about, you know, money and rights and credits and all this, and they sued each other. And I don't know how it resulted. I guess it's just good to know that the movie did find a way to theaters after all of that, because that's the sort of thing that sometimes can kill a project and can keep it from ever getting released.
I got to go back to Jerry Tarkovsky.
Uh-huh.
Did you look at what else he's produced?
I didn't.
Eight films. He's produced 8 films. Where's Papa? George Segal and Ruth Gordon.
Oh.
He produced Born to Win, again, George Segal and Robert De Niro. Paternity.
Oh, yeah.
Burt Reynolds, Beverly D'Angelo. Fear City. Strippers in Manhattan are being stalked and murdered by a psycho. It was okay to put that in a thing. That was Tom Berenger and Billy D. Williams. That's right. Wow. And then get ready. I almost want to do this one last because I'm so excited about it. Joseph Rubin, director. David Lowery and pretty much David Lowery. Dreamscape, 1984. Dennis Quaid, Max von Sydow, Christopher Plummer.
There's a guilty pleasure.
Tell me you love that film. Tell me you love that film.
I love that film. At least I love my memories of that film.
Let me just say it. Enter a world where anything can happen. Close your eyes and let the nightmares begin. That was it, right? With the snakehead monster?
Yeah, the snakehead guy. Oh, yeah.
He's behind that. Andy? Oh, man, that was so good.
And not much else that was good.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Eddie Albert. Oh, my God. George Wendt. George Wendt was in that movie.
He did that. He produced that with Zupnik. They produced that together.
That's right.
Fear City, Dreamscape, Wildfire, and this.
Yeah, Wildfire. Woof. Linda Fiorentino. And this one is really, I think this is the one he's going to hang his hat on. That's all I'm saying. This is the one.
I think that's fair to say.
All right. Enough about that. Do we have anything else? Or are we ready to talk about numbers?
Yeah, let's talk numbers.
Let's talk about numbers. Andy, how did it do?
Well, like I said, it cost $12.5 million to make, which in today's dollars is about 20 3/4. So, you know, I think most of that went to actor salaries and to rain, right?
That seems bananas to me, but I also read that. that the single biggest line item on the film was the massive rain for the first 50 minutes of produced film. That is a ton of rain, and it turns out does that seem crazy to you as a producer? Like, am I nuts?
I mean, when you take actor salaries out, then I don't think it's nuts.
Because you don't pay those guys, even back then, you don't pay those guys as much as you pay for the rain. I mean, you don't pay as much for the rain as you pay for those guys.
No, right.
All right.
But unfortunately, this film it did not find an audience. It only made 10.7 million, which is about 17.8 million in today's dollars. So this film actually was a box office loser, despite the fact that it has kind of found an audience. And I think that people now kind of click with it. I mean, critics loved it. I think people really get a sense as to what's going on here. And I think that people do enjoy this film, even though at the time it ended up losing about 30,000 adjusted dollars per finished minute. It's right there with The Thing and La Femme Nikita on our list of films losing in the box office.
Wow. All right. Well, that gives us a good start.
Yes.
I say we rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to Flickchart, everybody. It's our very favorite site for matching movies, and you're gonna set up an account over there. It's what you should do, and you should do a search for Glengarry Glen Ross, and then you're gonna be asked to rank it against probably 10 or so of your other favorite movies, and it'll probably be movies like ranking Glengarry Glen Ross against, I don't know, I'm gonna say Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and you're gonna have to decide which is a better movie. I dare you. I triple dog dare you to make that pick. Andy, where do we start?
You are mean. Well, we're not starting there. We're starting with Glengarry Glen Ross versus The Bad Seed.
Glengarry Glen Ross, please.
Totally Glengarry Glen Ross. We didn't even talk about the title. It's such a weird title.
It's a weird title. I don't like talking about it. It makes me uncomfortable.
Can't even say it. Glengarry Glen Ross or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
I'm going to go Glengarry on this one, and I know you're going to go Eternal.
I'm really torn on this one, but I am going to go Eternal Sunshine.
How much are you going to go Eternal Sunshine?
I'm going there.
Here we go.
All right.
One, two, three. Scissors. Rock. Oh, really?
You're making me feel guilty. I'm still going with Eternal Sunshine. I'm sorry. I was going to switch because I care about you, but not that much. You know why? Because I'm a closer, Pete. I am a closer.
Have you made your decision for Christ?
Glengarry Glen Ross or The Killing. Little Stanley Kubrick action. I'm going to go Glengarry. Even though I love The Killing, I do feel that some of the, I think it's probably the voiceover might feel a little dated for me.
I'm with you.
Glengarry Glen Ross in the Glen Ross Highlands or Being There. Oh.
Glengarry Glen Ross.
Or for Being There, really?
You should know. I don't really care if you know this. The global Flickchart ranking of Glengarry Glen Ross is 279. It's in a good position. This film. Yeah. People like this film. I am one of them.
They do. But it's Being There, Pete. I'm going to go Glengarry, though. I am going to go Glengarry. Glengarry or 12 Monkeys. 12 Monkeys for me.
Yeah, 12 Monkeys.
Glengarry.
Shows you Glengarry Glen Ross.
Glengarry Glen Ross or Forrest Gump. I'm Forrest Gump.
Suck it, Glengarry.
Wow, Glengarry. Or The Man in the White Suit, Pete.
Oh. I do adore The Man in the White Suit.
I know you do.
On principle, I have to choose it.
All right, I'm Glengarry.
Okay, you can have it. My conscience is clear.
I knew you were going to use me.
Chomp.
I feel dirty. I feel like my white suit has been soiled. Glengarry Glen Ross or The Big Lebowski.
Please don't soil your suit. I'm definitely Glengarry Glen Ross over Lebowski.
Definitely Lebowski.
Oh, no. Please. Ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. Paper.
Ooh. 1,
2,
3.
Scissors.
Paper. Oh, skunked me on that.
That
one.
is as it should be.
But it's Lebowski. All right. Well, 66.
All right.
Number 66, sandwiched right between Forrest Gump and The Big Lebowski. That's a
will
lot
take
of
it.
names. We've got Gump, Gary, and Lebowski.
Gary, Glenn, and Ross. I'm a big fan of that number. That feels really good.
Yeah, 66. I think that's. It is a really stellar film, and I think that Mamet really shines through. This is the film that exemplifies Mamet as writer, and I'm really glad that it was included in this series this year.
I am too. It is a textbook good screenplay, and I think it's great to look at. For me, it's even more fun to think about when you think about the art of adaptation and an artist adapting his own work. I think it's just terrific. So I too am glad that we added it to the series this year. How does this do for star rating for you over on Letterboxd?
You know, some of the directing stuff dropped a little bit. I'm torn between 4 and 4.5, but I think I'm at 4.5.
I'm going to give you 4.5.
All right, 4.5 it is. I feel very good about that.
Me too. And now, all of that nonsense out of the way, where do we go from here? It's another big week.
We are finishing out our series, and it always saddens me when we're finishing a series, but I'm really curious to go back and revisit this one. This is Lee Tamahori's 1997 film, The Edge.
Now, my memory of this isn't all that great. I think we talked about this, and I was on the record as saying I didn't like it, but I am also on the record as saying I may not remember it that well.
This was something that I saw in the theaters a couple times. I was working as a projectionist at the time, and I think it was very easy to kind of just watch things. I remember watching this and really enjoying it at the time. I think there was something really interesting about Anthony Hopkins in the film. I love Alec Baldwin in it. It's not a perfect film, but I loved kind of the nature elements of it, and I think there's a lot going for it. The fact that I believe the title had been called The Bookworm before it became The Edge. I think that says a lot about it. So I don't think I've seen it probably since it was in theaters. So I'm pretty curious to go back and revisit this one and see how it holds up now.
And we have another short coming up this week. This is another one of our favorites. It's part of our little mini-series around the folks behind our very favorite movie sites. And, you don't have to go very far to find our love for Flickchart. And so we've got Nathan Chase and Jeremy Thompson. They're going to join us for a conversation about what has gone into making Flickchart and what's coming in the next big iteration of Flickchart. We're very excited about that conversation.
Can't wait.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and go to bed.
Will you go to bed? Go to bed. Will you go to bed?
I got a 1-star from Disappointed on. It's a recent one. It's titled Time You Will Never Get Back. Only give 1 because I can't give 0. Maybe it just wasn't my cup of tea, but due to the constant use of foul language, trust me, I'm not a prude, and a few curse words don't scare/bother me, but this was constant and unnecessary, and poor plotline. I didn't even finish the movie. Just couldn't take it anymore. Obviously I disagree, and I don't think there was enough foul language. I think there were certain passages that really they could have brought it home with a few more.
I like that Disappointed actually goes so far as to say maybe it wasn't his cup of tea. I mean, I think it's pretty clear it wasn't. Just own it.
If this was a tea, it would have been in a cup I would have passed.
Well, I have a 1-star also by Dr. Venus. Venus. Dr. Venus says, I didn't like it. I had to force myself to watch it. And even with that, I couldn't.
What?
It felt like a loop of going nowhere.
Man, that's almost a
Dr.
haiku.
Venus.
It felt like a loop of going nowhere. I need that middle 7. I had to force... Well, I could do this all night. Clearly, we disagree with Dr. Venus and disappointed. Sorry they had such trouble with it. But thank you, Amazon.
It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
Season 5 had some great adaptations, like our Meryl Streep Oscar-nominated performances series. We covered adaptations like Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The French Lieutenant's Woman.
It's a real Sophie's Choice between those books. You see what I did there?
Yeah. And I don't think it's quite at the level of a real Sophie's Choice.
We also did Snowpiercer for our Bong Joon-ho series, adapted from the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage. Man, I love that movie.
We had our 2-part 1939 series that included adaptations like Gone with the Wind, Ninotchka, The Women, and The Hound of the Baskervilles.
A number of those 1939 movies, like Goodbye, Mr. Chips, also tied into our recent 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominee series.
Our naughty children horror series had creepy adaptations like The Bad Seed, Village of the Damned, The Innocents, and Children of the Corn.
For our Hayao Miyazaki series, we talked about his take on Lupin III with the Castle of Cagliostro, plus his own The Wind Rises.
Some great listener choice picks too, Viridiana and The Great Escape.
And for our David Mamet Wright series, The Verdict, The Untouchables, and Glengarry Glen Ross.
Plus, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from our Shane Black series, adapted from Brett Halliday's novel, Bodies Are Where You Find Them.
Dive into the sources for all of these at thenextreel.com/originals.
Every book you buy helps support the show. Check out thenextreel.com/originals today and find your next read.